All right, so this week, Mitch, we got a couple of games that we have in store for week number 3 of the OHSAA State Football Playoffs. A lot of teams really coming into their own here as we have 2 games on the Big Time Sports docket this week. I want to remind you all that we will not be live streaming games this week. We'll be on game recordings that you can watch back on Big Time Sports' schedule. Be sure to go to bigtimesportsohio.com/schedule for your local listings. We'll get into the games this week. Let's start off with We could start off with the game. What's the game that is technically the North matchup, but it's happening in the South. We also have a South matchup that's technically happening in the North. This is a whole thing that's been going on this past week. I want to start off with the South game that's happening in the North because me and Dave Sheets will be in Louisville tonight for the Canton South versus West Branch matchup in the Division IV playoffs. These are 2 teams that are coming off of pretty significant victories. The Wildcats getting a close 1-point victory over Akron Buchtel in the second round. Meanwhile, West Branch took down Streetsboro pretty handily. The Warriors have come in with a very solid offensive performance this year, actually scoring the Wildcats in total points per game. And this is one where, Mitch, you said that the odds right now were in West Branch's favor, despite the Wildcats coming in with an unbeaten record.
Yeah, I mean, obviously it's not official because it's not legal to bet on high school sporting events or place lines. There are people out there, though, Mitch, that are crazy and they do things like that. And, West Branch is a 2-score favorite tonight. And I brought that up to you because it is odd. And I wonder if it goes with how the teams won last week, how West Branch was able to handle business, how Canton South had really their first scare of the season with a 1-point win over Akron Buchtel. There's a really good quarterback in this game. There's 2 of them, but only one is being talked about right now, it feels like, and it's not Poochie Snyder. It's Bo
Alazas. We went over this in the pre.
I forgot. Okay, yeah. I forgot. I don't understand why it's like Canton South's being slighted. I feel like everybody's talking about West Branch and not Canton South. And I could sit here and be corrected later. I could sit here when we record next week and Canton South just doesn't have it tonight. I don't know if I'm going to, though. I really like Canton South tonight. I think Poochie Snyder and this Wildcats team has something special going on. A lot of these teams at this point in the season have something special going on, but I think the way they won last week really helps them in a game like tonight, where if it is close, it's not going to be like, oh, it's a close game against a really good team. We haven't been in this position. It's like, no, we were just in this position last week, guys, and guess what? We made big time plays when we had to.
Sure.
We made stops. We made completions. We ran the ball when we had to. Like, I really think the Canton South, with that game last week, that could ultimately be a game that propels them if they win tonight. Moving forward, this is going to be an entertaining game, though. Let's put it that. This is not going to be a blowout either way, I think.
Probably not.
I think that this is going to be a lot of high scoring. And sure. It could be what team forces a turnover first. It could very well be what offense has the ball last type of game tonight. I think you and Dave Sheets are going to have a great time calling that game tonight. It's going to be fun. I wish I was there. I'll be at a different game tonight, which I'm also excited to be at. But obviously, for our sake, Stark County's sake, and Big Time Sports' sake, I'm pulling for Canton South tonight. I think they have a really good chance.
I mean, this will be possibly the 3rd straight year that West Branch will get into the Sweet 16 of the region or the Division IV playoffs, while the Wildcats are looking for their first ever 3-win postseason. So West Branch definitely has the experience to get back to the further depths of the postseason. But the Wildcats come in, obviously, with Poochie Snyder leading the helm. Snyder is 1 touchdown away, by the way, from breaking Cameron Blair's Stark County all-time record for passing touchdowns. He surpassed Blair in passing yards earlier in the season, but if he gets a score tonight, he will get, 116 touchdowns. He'll be going on 117. So this is going to be possibly a record-breaking night for Snyder. Obviously, he probably wants to go away with the victory more so than the record. And they do have the resources to do so. He's got one of his top receivers, one of the top receivers in the state, in Tavon Castle, who came up big on defense last week and got a key interception against the Griffins to secure the victory. But West Branch has a number of key guys that are going to be potentially dangerous as well. Receiver Joey Jackson took an opening kick, or took a kickoff back with 8 minutes to go for a touchdown last week in the 31-28 win over Streetsboro. And not to mention, I mean, their rushing game right now has aided them also in this matchup. And I'm wondering if Canton South's defense, who hasn't been... They've had some of their high scoring affairs this season. We saw the week 2 matchup against Dover. We saw a couple of ones throughout the season. I'm wondering if that's what's going to be if not the biggest issue, but that's going to be the thing that West Branch can exploit in order to come out with this victory.
It's going to have to be something they exploit, because we just touched on the offenses. The other thing I wonder is Canton South does have, and listen, when you get down to these divisions, and this is obviously no knock, it's just where you really are at this point in the season. The lower divisions you go, the more players that play both ways. And if there's a way for West Branch to potentially tire out the Canton South defense that has multiple guys that play both ways, that could be a recipe for success as well. I don't know. I think that with where I'm at right now, I just feel like this could be Canton South's year. I just feel like there's something in me right now. There's all these other games we can talk about, all these other local teams playing, but something right now is just telling me, like, Canton South is the team right now. And I like that they're being slighted, because I think for the first time maybe in a few weeks, Mitch, maybe all season, it's not bulletin board material. It's not Browns is the Browns bulletin board material from Juju Smith-Schuster and Chase Claypool.
Okay.
But they have something to throw at their players now to get them fired up a little bit more. Listen, it's playoff football. It's win or go home time.
Yeah.
They're already fired up. But in terms of like tuning that focus in a little bit more, right now they can use nobody outside of this locker room, for the most part, is believing in us to win this game. Even though that we are undefeated, we are one of the top teams, we have all this and we've done this, but I'm taking Canton South. I feel good that I feel like it's their year.
It could be. I mean, this is an unbeaten team. It's been a magical season for Canton South all season. And going back to those defenses, we talked about the numbers. The Warriors are currently giving up just over 20 points per game, 20.3. The Wildcats are running 24.1, so slight edges on offense and defense. And then the rushing game for West Branch, Boston Malinix has been. This is his second straight year with over 1,000 yards rushing, 148 carries so far this year for 7.8 yards per carry and 19 touchdowns. So I think that's what is really going to might be the difference tonight, is that West Branch can be deadly passing and rushing. Yes. And Alizis can kind of get out and scramble there as well. If you're relying on Snyder a little bit too much, then that could be tricky for South.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is you want to keep West Branch in 3rd and long, right? But even then, if you're talking about Mullinix, who's averaging, you just said 7+ yards a carry, 3rd and long, it could still potentially be a running down for them, which you have. Canton South's defense is going to have to play their best game of the season. There's no doubt about that. West Branch's defense is going to have to play the best game of the season too. I think these offenses are so prolific, they can beat you in multiple ways, but West Branch, I think, can do it more efficiently through the air and on the ground than what Canton South can do, just because Canton South relies so much on Pucci, both in the air and on the ground, with his scrambling abilities, that in terms of the freshness of one of the two teams, you have to lean West Branch offense, I think, just because it's not going to be out, Bo running the ball when they have Mullinax. And if Canton South keeps them in 3rd and long, and if they can shut down the running game, I think they will have a great chance. But if West Branch gets both going, that's when Canton South might be in a pickle here.
My last thing is the last time the Warriors played the Wildcats was 2 seasons ago over at Breck Bueller Stadium. 63-42, the Warriors came out with a road victory over the Wildcats. So it might be another high-scoring affair between two former conference members. They were in the EBC together, correct? I believe that was what the case was. And then South left to join another conference, the Pac-7. I should have written that note before I gotten down here. But, they were former conference members. Yeah, the whole thing. The other game that we have on the docket, actually, I want to go to your game first. No, we're going to go back to the other game on the docket. It's Green. Green is coming to Dover. They're coming over from Uniontown to Dover, and they're going to be playing a Crater Stadium matchup against Westerville South. This is going to be a very interesting affair between the two teams. The Bulldogs coming off a pretty nice win over Hoover, their Federal League rivals, in the second round. I mean, right now the Bulldogs, they look healthy. A lot of their guys are pretty much back. I mean, you get Samino Manson back into that mix as well. You still have guys who are working that receiving core, doing some good things. I mean, can this offense do enough to come out against a Westerville South squad that hasn't scored a ton in these playoffs, but their defenses remain stout?
Canal Winchester.
Or Winchester, yeah. What did I say?
Westerville South.
Oh, excuse me. Sorry. Yeah.
I think Green can. I think Green will. Canal Winchester is a team that runs the ball very effectively. Canal Winchester is a team that could potentially give Green a hard time if they control the clock or if they're scoring big play after big play and Green is not moving the ball on offense. But Green is playing the best football they've played all year right now. Not only are they getting healthier, the offense is flowing, the defense is playing lights out right now. I have to think that as long as Green is not turning the football over tonight, I have to think their defense is going to put Canal Winchester in a lot of tough spots, take away the run game, like we just mentioned with West Branch and Canton South. Can Canton South keep West Branch in third and long? Can Green keep Canal Winchester in third and long? If they do, I think Green is going to have a very good opportunity. But if Canal Winchester runs that ball effectively early and big gains, big gashes, 10-plus yard runs, and they're controlling the clock, I think Green might find themselves in trouble, especially if it gets late in the game, Mitch, and it's a 2-score game and Green is forced to pass. Green has had the comfortability of playing ahead.
Yeah.
How is this team going to respond now with Samino Manson back, who has not played from behind since he's been back? Let's put that in perspective. I don't think they're going to put a lot of pressure on themselves. I think this game is going to be very entertaining. I think every game we have tonight has the opportunity to be very close and very entertaining. It's what team is going to show up for all these local teams that we're talking about. What Canton South team is showing up, what Green Bulldogs team is showing up, and then the other two Stark County teams that are in action tonight, Canton McKinley, and then, 3 other ones, Lake and Massillon.
Right.
Which teams are showing up there? And I do like Green tonight. I think Green right now just has something going. And the winner of that Canal Winchester and Green game is going to play the winner of the Lake and Massillon game tonight. And that could be either a Federal League versus Federal League school. It could be a rematch of Green and Massillon from a few years ago. It could be Massillon versus Canal Winchester or Lake versus Canal Winchester. We're going to have one area school in that region representing Stark County in the regional final next week. I have to think Green's going to be one of those teams. I really do. I as long as they don't turn the ball over tonight, I think you lean on Antonio Martin. You get the ball into your playmaker's hands. I'm sorry, that's the wrong team. Same colors. I was thinking Hoover for a sec. But if you get the ball, Green has so many weapons. If Samino Manson's playing the way he can play when he was playing earlier this season, this is going to be a team that you do not want to face right now.
You were right. Zach Brower's for the other team. Zach Bagley is for Green. He's had a touchdown in 8 straight games. He's caught a touchdown in 8 straight games. So there is a passing game that could boost Green to a victory against a South team or against a Winchester team, that has kind of struggled to put up the points. 157 yards of offense combined against Watkins Memorial. That was a 7-3 victory. So the defense can be very good. It's a testament to see if they'll be able to put up the points if Green gets some points on the board early on in that game.
And the other thing is if Green can score and that defense is not getting a break for Canal Winchester, this game could be over fast because they run the ball more effectively than they pass. So if you put this team in a deficit early and they are forced to be one-dimensional through the air, in which it seems like they are not extremely comfortable compared to these other teams, specifically Green, Canal Winchester could find themselves in a tough spot. But this will be the best defense Green has faced in the playoffs so far. This will probably be the best defense they've played. I mean, look, you go back to the Week 10 game against Lake where they blew them out. Mm-hmm. That was probably the best defense they were game planning for all year.
Right.
But their game plan was just perfect. They executed everything perfectly. They caught Lake on a bad week. Green's going to have to do the exact same thing tonight. And I have no reason to believe that they won't. I do like Green. This will be interesting, though. Going down to Dover, they were last year, they played at Dover, I believe, too.
I know
they played Westerville South.
I believe so.
Yeah, I did that
yes.
game. I was with Dave Sheets for that game.
Yes. Okay.
Or that was Lake. I'm sorry.
What were your thoughts on the Brick House? By the way, was that your first time there?
Yeah. I liked it a lot. It was a very, very different type stadium atmosphere. I liked that stadium a lot, and it's a good venue. Very nice venue for these two teams squaring off tonight, as it's going to be in the middle of pretty much both. Maybe a little longer drive for Canal Winchester, but not drastically longer. And it's not like both teams are traveling to a spot that doesn't make sense, much like Massillon and Lake last year when they went to Parma.
There's a testimonial, Dover fans. The other two games, speaking of Massillon, you mentioned that we have on the Federal League docket tonight. I have my own thoughts of what's going to happen here. First one being the game you're going to, Massillon against Lake. Where's that one again?
Hoover.
That's right. That's it. We're going to North Canton. This one, as good as Lake has been in these playoffs, as good as Nate Baker's been in these playoffs, I still expect Massillon to win by multiple touchdowns. And it's nothing against Lake. Massillon's on a different level right now. It's just the way that they've been playing on this offense. If Lake gets off to a good defensive start and holds them in the first half, then you have a ball game.
Yeah.
But if Massillon gets at least 14 points, then it's going to be over by the third.
Well, you're not talking about a team that's just playing great football. You're talking about the number one team in Division II right now in the state of Ohio. They're the number one team for a reason, Mitch. This is the best Massillon team I've seen in a number of years. And this is the first time, and it's crazy, and whether it's fair or not, it doesn't matter. Everybody, year in, year out, talks about two teams in Division II. Can Massillon finally beat Hoban? That's what the talk is. Every single year now for the past 6 years, it feels like. Can Massillon beat Hoban? Can Massillon beat Hoban? They didn't last year. They didn't the year before that. A few years ago, they did. Right, and then they ended up losing the state championship game to the school Nate Moore left in Cincinnati. Cannot remember what team he left. I don't know if it was DeSales. No. Either way, this Lake defensive front is so talented, and you look at some of the players they have there, and even Nate Moore, complimented them this week.
LaSalle,
Cincinnati LaSalle is where Nate Moore left. They lost that team in the state championship. Massillon did with Nate Moore as the head coach. Their linebackers and Charlie Christopher and Evan Brady, and then the guys on the outside like Joey Garrow, those are really, really good players. But I've seen Massillon a few times this year. The reason this Massillon team is so different this year is because of DeJuan Owens. I have not seen, personally, in the past few years I've covered the high school football in Stark County, a quarterback with the speed that he has, a quarterback that can call a quarterback draw and still beat a team if they know it's coming. The Massillon offensive line is legit. This is probably going to be the biggest and toughest offensive line Lake has faced this year. I would have to assume this is going to be the second best defensive line that Massillon's seen all year after St. Ed's. I do think Lake's defense is that good. If you don't believe me, they just went to overtime last week, tied at 0. Their defense didn't do a bad job at all, and they walked away a winner in triple overtime. It's going to be tough. I mean, last year, this was a 24-6 game all the way up at Parma. You and I were there, freezing cold. I still might be cold from that game still.
And that game seems like a blowout. It wasn't that way until later on when they started making mistakes and then Massillon started taking advantage. It was a hard game to win for Massillon.
Well, and if you remember, Lake made a mistake early on when they were backed up against their own end zone with a fumble. Massillon got it, and that's how they scored first. Lake's offense wasn't able to move the ball, but Massillon really struggled moving the ball. So this is where it's going to be. Is DeJuan Owens really that big of a difference maker? Which so far this year, Mitch, I think it's safe to say he is. But second, is the Lake defense up for the challenge? I think they're always up for the challenge. They lean on that defense. Can they get a score from the defense? Can Lake force Massillon to turn the ball over? And can the Lake Blue Streak defense maybe pick up a fumble and score? Interception? Maybe take it back inside the 10? To your point, if this game is close at half, Lake has a chance. I think the more pressure you put on Massillon, the more likely it is for them to crack. But at the same time, they've been in a close game this year with St. Ed's. Yeah, that one came down to an onside kick for St. Ed's. It's come down to the wire. Everything is stacked against Lake in this matchup, and that's no shot at Lake. Massillon just has tremendous players everywhere.
Yeah,
but it's the playoffs. We've seen crazy things happen. I'm not going to rule out Lake, but to your point, I think everything indicates that Massillon wins this game. I'm very, very intrigued. The difference here is this is now the second time Lake has ever played Massillon, and it's going to be for 2 consecutive years in the playoffs. Since 2017, in 23 regional games, Massillon is 22-1, and their average winning margin is 38.7 to 12.7. They've had the experience both coaching-wise and player-wise, and Lake just doesn't necessarily have that experience in terms of going this deep in the playoffs year in, year out. The Tigers have outscored their first 2 opponents 91-13, but even head coach Nate Moore from Massillon says he expects this to be a difficult challenge because of the Lake Blue Streak defense, which I think everyone's kind of saying that. Lake, first off, we saw a couple weeks ago against Perry when you and I were there. They turned the ball over against Perry team. You cannot do that against Massillon because Massillon will score. Massillon will take that ball and score one way or another. And if you turn it over multiple times and give them multiple opportunities, they're eventually going to break through. I'm intrigued to see how Lake schemes the defense up tonight. What is their plan of attack? Are they going to say, all right, we're going to spy Owens cannot beat us in the ground, he's going to have to beat us to the air? Are they going to say, hey, we can't let him beat us in the air, we're going to let him beat us on the ground because our guys can fly to the football? This is a game, though, when I talk about controlling clock, that if Lake gets the ball, as boring as it might sound, as boring as it could be, this is not about style points. This is survive in advance. This is win at all cost, control the clock. If Lake can keep the time of possession in their favor tonight and work the clock and keep the game close, then they're going to have a chance. But on the flip side, if they're doing that, Massillon's scoring in 2-3 plays, it could be a long night for Lake. And that's not, I don't say that because I'd like to see, I really like what Coach Dana George has done at Lake. I really like that Blue Streak team. I think they're a tough football team that play their style of football. But there's no secret that this Massillon team is better this year than they were last year. Even head coach Dana George said that this week in an article from the Canton Repository. We'll see. We will see. This could be a very entertaining game. This game could be over at halftime. I don't know. We'll have to stay tuned to find out.
I also want to give a shout out to Jameer Gamble, who's averaging about 6.9 yards per carry as the running back for the Tigers this year. So he's not the only. Owens is not the only rushing potential that the Tigers have in this game, so that Lake will have to focus on. I don't know. Again, I expect Massillon to win. Anything can happen. I think something could happen tonight against between McKinley and St. Ed's. Massillon did beat St. Ed's early in the season. Massillon beat McKinley. It does not technically equate that McKinley can beat St. Ed's, but I mean, Massillon has the rushing attack. They have some good guys on defense. I do wonder if St. Ed's is going to be too much to overcome, but what say you?
We talked about this a little bit earlier this week, so if you haven't yet, go back and listen to our most recent episode of the podcast. What McKinley Bulldogs team is showing up? We've seen him a couple times this year. We saw him at Jackson. We saw him at Tom Benson Hall of Fame Stadium versus Avon, another very good team in Division II. They make mistakes. But when Massillon plays their style of football, McKinley plays their style of football. I really apologize for mixing those two names up, especially if you're a McKinley fan or a Massillon fan. When McKinley plays their style of football, they're a tough team to beat. If they can play disciplined football, they're really tough. But if they start making mental errors in terms of penalties, dropping passes, dropping interceptions, this game could get out of hand. But I look back to that Week 5 game against Green, Mitch, 27-0. McKinley back against the walls. Samino Manson goes down for Green. You're thinking, oh my gosh, like what is McKinley doing? They come back and win. It's there. McKinley has it. They can do it. Will they do it tonight against arguably the best team in the state of Ohio? Definitely the best team in Division I. They're looking for their third consecutive state championship. McKinley is looking to be the team that stops that. This could very well be St. Ed's toughest game up until maybe a state championship game. I don't know. For McKinley, it's a tough travel to Parma to take on St. Ed's, but I'm not going to rule it out. I'm not going to rule out an upset here. You can't, not at this juncture of the state playoffs. And Keaton Road cannot turn the ball over. And Nino Hill has to be an effective rusher tonight for McKinley. If this team plays good football and doesn't play the game they played against Jackson, where the Coach Hall afterwards said we were more lucky than we were good, they'll have a chance. They're going to have to get lucky probably. I talk about this all the time. Not always the best team wins every game or wins every championship. For teams to get there, you have to have a break fall your way, right? Look at the Cleveland Browns, for example, past 2 weeks against Seattle Seahawks. A ball goes off a helmet and it gets intercepted against the Seahawks. Last week, a ball goes off a helmet. It's a touchdown for the Browns. I'm not saying a ball has to go off the helmet for McKinley tonight, but they need a tip ball or something to fall their way to have a chance. If they can do that, if they can make St. Ed's a team that turns the ball over, that doesn't do it a whole lot, and McKinley can capitalize on it, they have a shot. I'm intrigued to see how this one plays out, especially after St. Ed's was able to flex the way they were last week against Glen Oak, a team that beat McKinley this year.
Yeah, the points they were able to put on there.